I knew the air was poisoned the moment Dale called me kiddo. I'm 49, have 2 slipped discs, and can recite more vendor credentials from memory than his whole operations crew could fit in a spreadsheet. But sure, kiddo. That Monday, he leaned against my cubicle wall like a toothpaste model on a lunch break, grinning as if he'd just invented delegation. "Hey, Madison, stellar work on the transition roadmap," he chirped. "Samantha's a natural. Just help her with the handoff, yeah?" That was my first clue. This was a firing dressed up in management jargon. I'd been with Halverson Data Systems for 13 years. Not one of those culture deck types with standing desk yoga balls and self-branded hoodies. I was the glue, the duct tape, the silent firewall that kept our cloud infrastructure from catching fire during every merger and outage Dale's hires created. I built that vendor stack line by line, negotiation by negotiation, fueled by caffeine and insomnia. Legal didn't understand half of what I buried in those contracts, but they trusted me because things worked. Until that morning. 2 weeks earlier, Dale's daughter, fresh from an overpriced Arizona business school that advertised its espresso bar more than its curriculum, had joined the company. Samantha Halverson, transition lead, my replacement. Her only experience with infrastructure was resetting her Wi-Fi when Netflix buffered. Now she had an executive badge and a father convinced she was the second coming of Bezos. Dale clapped my shoulder like we were fishing buddies. "You'll still be involved, of course. A week or 2 of knowledge transfer and then we'll get you sorted." Sorted, like I was a misfiled receipt. I smiled because I'd seen this play before. New blood, old loyalty, HR buzzwords covering a burial. I didn't argue. I just watched his reflection fade in the glass of my monitor until he was gone. Then I opened the drawer beneath my desk, pulled out the manila folder I'd kept under lock and key for years. MVA, final signed copy. The master vendor agreement I'd spent 9 months negotiating. 9 months of conference calls, midnight red lines, and legal hair-splitting over data sovereignty clauses. The vendor, Sky Layer Cloud, had tried everything. Price hikes, hidden provisioning changes, even sneaking our data onto a shared cluster without telling us. I dragged their chief compliance officer through regulatory hell until we landed on an ironclad deal. And tucked inside that deal, halfway through the legal weeds, was a single line of quiet power. Clause 14.6c. All service provision is contingent upon the continued employment of the designated officer named in Appendix B. I flipped to Appendix B. My name stared back at me. Madison J. Cole. I didn't laugh. I didn't plot revenge. I just placed one fresh copy on Samantha's spotless new desk with a yellow sticky note. Be sure to review page 47, Appendix B. Then I gathered my mug, my charger, my dying succulent, and walked out of that fluorescent zoo with the kind of calm that unsettles people who mistake silence for surrender. HR tried the sympathy script. Tight smiles, we'll stay in touch, and a cardboard box like a participation trophy for loyalty. I nodded, said nothing, and took one last detour to the server room. The hum of the racks sounded like an old friend breathing. I rested a hand on the cabinet that held the backup keys. "Good luck, old girl," I whispered, then left. No goodbye email, no cake, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd built something bulletproof, and they were about to find out how bulletproof. Samantha's first day looked like a parody of leadership. Oversized blazer, motivational tone, echoing voice. "Morning, team! Let's crush some silos today." I crushed an antacid instead. Dale called an all-hands at 10 o'clock a.m. to introduce her, beaming like a proud Little League dad. "Fresh eyes, fresh ideas," he said. The room gave polite golf claps. Then the dagger. And Madison has graciously agreed to assist with the transition before she moves on to new opportunities. Graciously agreed, my ass. The offboarding email had hit my inbox before sunrise. Subject line: Closure plan. Madison Cole. No mention of a severance meeting, just deadlines. I left quietly, but not empty-handed. On Samantha's desk, that yellow note waited like a lit fuse. Tick, tick, tick. The cherry on top of that humiliation sundae arrived that afternoon. An email from Samantha herself. Subject line, transition fun. The body text could have been written by a motivational poster. Hey Madison, so excited to work with you before you leave. Can't wait to pick your brain. Let's grab lunch sometime. Besties? Sam. I stared at the screen until the blinking cursor felt like it was mocking both of us. Pick my brain? As if 13 years of engineering chaos, vendor wrangling, and midnight incident triage were a Pinterest board she could casually browse. I didn't reply. I didn't even sigh. I walked to the printer, opened the MVA file from my encrypted flash drive. Yes, I always kept one. And printed only the signature sheet and Appendix B. I highlighted Clause 14.6c in bright yellow. No staples, no smudges, just precision. Then I printed a full copy of the entire MVA, 87 pages of dense legal engineering poetry, clipped it neatly, added another sticky note. Be sure to review page 47, Appendix B. I placed it squarely in the center of Samantha's immaculate new desk, right beside a company water bottle still wrapped in plastic and a pen she'd probably chosen because it matched her manicure. You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat paper. I treated it like documentation that saved companies. She treated it like decoration. Later that day, while grabbing coffee, I overheard her talking to Dale in the break room. Hey, quick question, she said with that performative brightness. What's a designated officer? Is that like someone from compliance? Dale laughed, that confident, dismissive laugh of a man who thinks experience is an outdated concept. Nah, legal fluff. Madison probably tucked that in years ago. You can ignore it. We'll clean up that stuff later. They laughed together, father and daughter, like this was just another cute anecdote in their family sitcom. That was the moment I knew I didn't need to lift a finger. Gravity was going to handle this one for me. By the time they were done laughing, I was home, barefoot, coffee in hand, watching the sun through blinds and the quiet hum of an inbox refreshing itself. A new message appeared from Skylayer Cloud. Subject line, outstanding action required. Officer verification reminder number 1. I flagged it, leaned back, and smiled to myself. Clause 14.6c wasn't vengeance. It was maintenance. The vendor required verification of the designated officer's continued employment within 72 hours, or services would be suspended pending reauthorization. No verification, no system, and no one except me had ever read that far into the document. The next morning, Samantha swept into the bullpen like she was launching a lifestyle brand. Morning, team! Let's innovate today! She dropped buzzwords like spare change, agile workflow, cross-departmental synergy, dynamic scaling, every sentence lighter on meaning than the one before. She even started a Slack channel called Sam's Leadership Corner, where she posted motivational quotes in pastel backgrounds and tagged random engineers asking for updates they didn't owe her. Her father called it initiative. I called it theater. Around noon, Darnell from IT messaged me privately. Hey, heard about the transition. You holding up? I sent him a short reply. Keep backups local. He didn't ask why. He just replied, got it. Meanwhile, the vendor's second email arrived at the company inbox. Urgent. Verification window closing in 48 hours. Samantha opened it. I saw the read receipt through the system logs, and then dragged it straight to trash. 2 hours later, she posted on Slack about how satisfying it felt to have an empty inbox. Dale, meanwhile, scheduled an all-hands for Wednesday. Let's celebrate new beginnings, he wrote, dripping enthusiasm that could rot teeth. When the meeting came, he stood beside her at the front like a motivational duo. Halverson Data Systems is evolving, and Samantha will help us take bold new steps forward, he said. Not one mention of me, not one word of thanks. 13 years of architecture gone in a puff of recycled air. Samantha waved, smiled, and announced, "I might not have all the answers, but I have passion." Someone clapped out of habit. Everyone else just watched. In her office, the MVA sat untouched. Page 47. Appendix B. Waiting. By Thursday morning, Skylayer Cloud sent the third and final reminder. Subject line: Final notice. Officer verification window expires in 24 hours. Samantha never opened it. The system logs confirmed she deleted it just after 8 o'clock a.m., right between posting a company selfie captioned "New Week, New Mindset," and launching her innovation sprint. That's what she called it, an innovation sprint. No objectives, no metrics, just words strung together like beads on a lanyard from a corporate retreat. I wasn't in the office anymore, but I didn't need to be. Every system I'd built left me with passive visibility: logs, backups, admin pings. I could see everything unfold like a slow-motion train wreck, safe from the wreckage. Darnell sent me a discreet message that afternoon. "Hey, did you do something to the Skylayer contract? Greg and legal look like they're trying to read Sanskrit." I typed back, "No, they did it to themselves," and that was that. Friday came. Samantha was halfway through planning her first company-wide alignment meeting. She'd sent out an invite titled "Crushing Silos" together with 3 exclamation points and a clip art handshake. Meanwhile, Dale strutted through the office like a proud general who'd just conquered a hill made of hubris. Then 9:01 a.m. arrived, and with it, silence. Not quiet, dead air. Halverson's digital nervous system collapsed in seconds. Internal dashboards went blank. Billing systems threw 404 errors. Customer portals timed out. Authentication tokens failed across the board. Emails stopped syncing. The entire back end turned into a corpse. Slack still worked, which only made it worse. Within 60 seconds, the company's channels became a digital riot. Engineering. Anyone else getting code 147 on the cluster VMs? Sales. Client dashboard down, can't pull invoices. Billing ops. Stripe connection lost. HR. Payroll won't load. Random. So, lunch plans? Panic spreads fast in open offices. Dale burst out of his office, clutching his phone, barking, "Everyone stay calm. It's just a vendor outage. I'll call Skylayer." Except he couldn't. Their admin console had locked him out. Root credentials, my credentials, had been automatically suspended when the system detected my termination. The kill switch had worked perfectly. Darnell, pale and sweating, called it first. "It's the clause," he said aloud in the middle of the room. "It's the designated officer clause. It triggered." Greg blinked at him like a man trying to read a foreign alphabet. "The what?" Raju from DevOps swiveled in his chair, whispering, "Clause 14.6c. In the MVA, services tied to the designated officer." Samantha froze mid-sip of her caramel latte. "Wait, is that bad?" You could hear a pin drop, or maybe the sound of a $40 million data infrastructure bleeding out. Legal joined the emergency Zoom at 9:17, still flipping through papers. "We're reviewing the contract now," said the paralegal, monotone, already sweating. Translation: they'd never read it before today. "Please hold all escalation emails." Dale's face turned crimson. "We've had outages before," he shouted. "We'll just reset the admin panel." Darnell shook his head. "No, this isn't an outage. It's a termination protocol. The system executed a suspension of services because the designated officer's employment wasn't verified. It's not reversible." Samantha blinked. "But can't we just call support?" "We don't have a contract anymore," Darnell replied. Our last verified officer was Madison. That name hung in the air like smoke. "You did confirm her, right?" Dale asked, voice cracking. Samantha looked down. "I deleted those emails. I thought they were spam." The blood drained from his face so fast, I half imagined the AED machine powering up in the hallway. "You what?" he whispered. "You told me to focus on the dashboard migration," she said weakly. I didn't think it mattered. Phones started ringing. Real landlines, the kind reserved for emergencies. Partners, clients, resellers. Every call sounded like the same explosion. "Our systems are down." Dale tried to answer one, muttered hello, and lost his voice halfway through. Samantha sat down hard, eyes vacant. Darnell whispered what everyone else was thinking. "We're dead." And across town, in my little home office, coffee steaming beside me, I refreshed the SkyLayer dashboard. Status: suspended. Clause 14.6c executed. Action required: reinstate designated officer. Deadline passed. I didn't smile this time. I just sat there, watching gravity finish what arrogance had started. By 10 o'clock a.m., the office had turned into something between a crisis command center and a crime scene. Every monitor glowed red with system alerts. Legal was printing the MVA like it was some sacred scroll that might tell them how to resurrect their sins. Dale was pacing in circles, clutching a phone that wasn't connected to anything useful. The CEO, Bryce Denton, finally descended from his 7th-floor tower, wearing a Bluetooth headset and a look that said someone had just set fire to his bonus. "Talk to me," he demanded. "What are we looking at?" Legal's head counsel, a woman named Janet, spoke without lifting her eyes. Clause 14.6c. All services are contingent upon the employment of the designated officer listed in Appendix B. She flipped to the back and read aloud like a coroner delivering a verdict. Designated officer, Madison J. Cole. Silence, the kind that swallows an entire building. Bryce blinked. "You're telling me our entire platform was bound to one person's employment status?" "Not quite," Janet said. "It was tied to the designated authority of her role. Without written reassignment, service continuity terminates." Dale swallowed hard. "But she wrote that. She must have slipped it in." Janet didn't even look up. "You signed it. Twice." Bryce turned toward Dale slowly, like a predator locking on. "You approved this?" Dale raised his hands like he was directing traffic at his own accident. "Nobody reads appendix language like that. She buried it in legal nonsense. How was I supposed to—" "She flagged it," Janet cut in sharply. "It's highlighted on a sticky note left on the replacement's desk. The one that says, quote, 'Be sure to review page 47, Appendix B.'" The entire room went still again, as if air itself had stopped cooperating. Bryce leaned on the table, both palms down, voice low and deadly calm. "So, let me get this straight. We terminated the one person who negotiated our most critical vendor agreement, ignored 3 verification emails, and are now locked out of our own infrastructure because you, Dale, signed off on a continuity clause you didn't bother to understand?" Dale's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "It's not like I meant for this to happen. She was territorial. She never shared—" "Stop," Bryce said. Just that one word, sharp as a blade. He turned to legal. "What are our options?" Janet shuffled the papers. 2. Reinstate Madison as the designated officer or renegotiate a new MVA from scratch. Given the breach, SkyLayer will require full reprovisioning, new rates, and a 3-week minimum timeline. Dale looked like someone had unplugged his soul. Samantha, pale and trembling, whispered, 3 weeks? We can't even access payroll." "Then get her back," Bryce said flatly. "Call her, pay her, I don't care how." But I didn't pick up the first call. Let them sweat. Let them learn. They sent an email next. Subject line: Consultation request. Urgent platform issue. It came from Dale's assistant, polite and sterile. "Dear Madison, given your extensive familiarity with Halverson's vendor relationships, we'd like to explore a short-term consulting engagement to assist with an ongoing issue related to the Skylayer platform. Please let us know if you're available to discuss at your earliest convenience. I stared at it, sipping my lukewarm coffee. No apology, no ownership, just ongoing issue, as if they'd misplaced a stapler, not detonated their own infrastructure. For a second, some small part of me wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to bask in the irony that the moment I walked out, the systems followed. But vindication is just vanity with better PR. I'd buried that part of myself years ago, right next to the patience for being called kiddo. So I opened a new email and typed, "Hi Emma, attached are my current consulting rates and availability. I work only through escrow. Terms are non-negotiable. Full payment required in advance for reactivation steps to be provided. Best, Madison J. Cole." I attached the PDF, Madison J. Cole rate sheet, Fall 2025. $275 per hour standard, $375 emergency, $7,500 retainer for high-risk restoration. No emojis, no fluff, just black text on white paper. I hit send, let the silence do the rest. They didn't take long to cave. By noon, Emma replied, "Hi Madison, thank you for your prompt response. We've reviewed your terms and are prepared to proceed under the emergency rate. Please find the escrow transfer confirmation attached. Warm regards, Emma." The retainer hit my account at 12:14 p.m. Sharp. No bargaining, no hesitation. Just quiet desperation signed and wired. That's how I knew they finally understood what my silence was worth. I didn't celebrate. I just leaned back in my chair and let the weight of 13 years settle into my shoulders. Light this time, not heavy. Then I drafted the reactivation plan. Slow, deliberate, surgical. Every instruction clear, time-stamped, and unambiguous. No miracles, just math. When the emergency Zoom began, the air inside the virtual room was thick with unspoken panic. I could see it in their faces, each of them lit by the sterile glow of laptop screens and regret. Bryce, the CEO, looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Shirt rumpled, tie gone. Legal sat stiff and expressionless in one corner, like they'd been carved out of paper. The CIO was clearly parked in her car somewhere, hot spotting from a Whole Foods parking lot. And at the bottom of the screen, smaller than everyone else, sat Samantha. Shoulders curved inward, eyes red, gaze fixed just below the camera like she couldn't stand to look anyone in the eye. I didn't speak first. I waited 15 seconds, letting the silence simmer, letting their nerves stretch until the tension hummed through the connection. "Good afternoon," I said finally, voice flat and clinical. "I've received confirmation of payment. We may proceed." Bryce nodded, slow and weary. "Thank you, Madison. We appreciate your flexibility." I didn't reply to that. Flexibility implied I bent. I didn't bend. I stated my terms. They complied. "Before we begin," I continued, "understand that reactivation cannot occur without one of two conditions. Either I am reinstated as the designated officer, or a new MVA is negotiated and accepted by Skylayer. The latter will take approximately 3 to 4 weeks. During that period, the platform will remain offline." The room went still. Bryce exhaled sharply. "We're prepared to reinstate you," he said, "effective immediately. Same title, same compensation." "No," I said. The word landed like a gavel. He blinked. "No? I am not returning as an employee," I said. "I'll act as a transition consultant with full operational authority for restoration purposes. I report to no one. I will not be listed in internal directories or org charts. My involvement ends upon full reactivation. Legal unmuted, voice subdued." "That's acceptable." Bryce's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine." Dale's camera flickered on next. His face looked hollow, gray. He tried for contrition. Madison, listen, I raised one hand, palm outward. Not sharp, not rude, just final. Dale, I said calmly, this meeting isn't about your feelings. He closed his mouth. Good. One small victory for professionalism. I shared my screen, showing the SkyLayer administrative console. Here's the restoration process, I began. We'll start with a provisioning reset token routed to my private endpoint, then re-authentication of admin credentials through my two-factor key. Once confirmed, I'll trigger a session override using the legacy dashboard backup, the one your team never decommissioned. From there, we'll rebuild API key cascades, re-establish data sync, and lift the service suspension. Each step came with screenshots, logs, verification timestamps. No fluff, no drama, just the sequence that would save their company. Samantha stayed muted, staring down, face pale. At one point, she covered her mouth with her hand, like she might cry. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity either. This was a transaction, pure and clean. A hard lesson delivered at market rate. When I reached the final line of code, I paused. Ready for reactivation? Bryce nodded. Do it. At 1:27 p.m., I pressed execute. The dashboard flashed green. Servers reconnected. Billing portals reappeared. Client dashboards came back to life. Data streams normalized. The heartbeat of Halverson returned. Bryce let out a breath so deep it sounded like something being exercised. I said, "Systems are stable. Restoration complete." For a moment, nobody spoke. The sound of breathing filled the Zoom call, a strange kind of reverent silence that only happens when people realize how close they came to losing everything. Bryce finally said, "It's done?" "It's done," I confirmed. "Your systems are stable, data integrity verified, and vendor channels are live again. I'll send the full report and invoice by end of day." Dale swallowed hard, his voice a rasp. "Madison, Look, I was wrong. You deserved better. I should have." I didn't let him finish. I paused the screen share, removed my earbuds, and stared directly into the camera. "This was never about what I deserved," I said, my tone cold but steady. "It was about what you failed to understand." I ended the call, the corporate equivalent of closing a coffin lid. 1:29 p.m., systems humming, dashboards green, panic dissolving into hollow relief. Slack threads filled with engineers cheering, celebrating like survivors crawling from wreckage. The CIO actually clapped on camera. Someone shouted, "We're back!" And laughter broke through the fatigue, the noise of salvation. But beneath it, I knew they didn't cheer for me. They cheered for survival. For themselves. I didn't need their gratitude. The invoice already sat in Bryce's inbox, escrow release queued and time-stamped. I leaned back, took a long breath, and let the quiet fill the room. Outside my window, the afternoon light stretched across the street, warm and forgiving. I hadn't felt peace like that in years. A notification popped up. Payment released. $9,375 received. Just like that, my time with Halverson Data Systems was officially over. I closed the laptop. No satisfaction, no bitterness. Just the steady calm of cause-meeting effect. Actions, consequences, resolution. A perfect equation. Later that week, I heard from Darnell. He wanted to meet for a drink, off the record. We met at a small bar near the train station, the kind of place where the lighting forgives everything. He slid into the booth, shook his head, and said, "You really did it." I sipped my whiskey. I didn't do anything. They fired the claws, not me. He laughed softly. You should have seen it. Dale looked like a ghost. Samantha hasn't shown her face in 2 days. HR's spinning the whole thing as an unexpected vendor disruption. I smiled faintly. That's corporate for, we set the building on fire and blamed the sprinklers. Darnell nodded, grinning, but his eyes softened. You okay, though? Better than okay, I said. Free. He raised his glass. To freedom. We drank in quiet understanding. Two veterans of an industry that feeds on loyalty and disposes of it like packaging. When I got home, I opened my laptop again, not to check in, but to archive everything. The folder labeled Halverson Legacy, contracts, logs, backups, went straight to a cold storage drive. One click, one confirmation. Gone. Then I opened another folder, one titled New Horizons. Inside were templates, tools, and my consulting brand I'd quietly built over the years. Cole Strategic Systems. It had been a side project, a dream I never thought I'd have the courage to launch. But now, with a freshly paid invoice and the last ghost of corporate dependency exorcised, it was time. I built the website that night. Clean, minimalist, black and white, with one tagline. Continuity is power. Underneath, specializing in vendor negotiation, compliance architecture, and crisis restoration. By midnight, the domain went live. Somewhere in an office across town, Dale was probably still rewriting his resume. Samantha, I imagined, was updating her LinkedIn bio to former transition lead, and Bryce, likely still in meetings, trying to spin the disaster as a learning opportunity. I wasn't angry anymore, not even amused, just done. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all, just walking away while the echo of your competence lingers louder than their apologies. The following Monday, the world kept turning. Halverson's press release went out at 9:00 a.m. sharp, a masterpiece of damage control and selective memory. Halverson Data Systems recently experienced a temporary vendor disruption during a scheduled transition. Services were fully restored with the assistance of external consultants. The company remains committed to innovation, resilience, and growth. No mention of me, of course. They couldn't risk admitting their entire infrastructure had been anchored to a single clause they never read. I wasn't surprised. Corporations are built to erase the hands that built them. The next day, Darnell texted me a screenshot from their internal Slack. A photo of Dale standing next to Bryce, captioned, "Leadership thanks the team for their extraordinary composure during our vendor event." Samantha wasn't in the picture. I later heard she'd been reassigned to business development, which is HR code for exile, without a headline. Dale, on the other hand, was still there, quieter, grayer, carrying the polite exhaustion of a man who'd been publicly dressed down but kept his job because failure at his level costs too much to fire. Bryce, rumor had it, had ordered legal to review every contract the company had ever signed. I almost laughed at that. It's always page 47 that gets them. A week later, my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject: Request for long-term advisory engagement. The sender was a VP from another firm, a competitor of Halverson's. He'd heard about my consulting success from one of their clients. Funny how fast word travels when an empire nearly collapses in daylight. I read the message twice, then typed my usual reply. Thank you for your interest. Please review attached rate sheet and engagement terms. Escrow only. That night, as I sat in my kitchen with the window open and the faint hum of the city beyond, I thought about the 13 years I'd given that place. The late nights, the missed birthdays, the weekends spent in server rooms instead of sunlight. I thought about the countless fires I'd put out, the crises I'd prevented, the systems I'd kept alive while people like Dale gave speeches about synergy. None of it was wasted. It just finally had context. The peace that followed wasn't triumphant. It was quiet, like the calm after a storm that finally burned itself out. I kept one memento from my time there, a small, yellow sticky note pinned above my desk. The same one I'd left on Samantha's, back when she still believed leadership came from hashtags and coffee mugs. It said, in the same careful handwriting, "Be sure to review page 47. It reminded me that sometimes the smallest details hold the most power. That clarity isn't loud, it's deliberate. 2 months later, Cole Strategic Systems had 3 steady clients and more inquiries than I could handle. One was a government contractor, another a fintech startup terrified of repeating Halverson's mistake, and the third, poetic as it was, an ex-Halverson engineer who'd left after the fallout and wanted to build something of his own. When he called, he said, "I want to do it right this time. Start with continuity." I smiled. That's the only way to start. I still think about that clause sometimes. Clause 14.6c. It wasn't meant as revenge. It was meant as responsibility, a safeguard against carelessness, written by someone who understood how fragile systems are when left in the wrong hands. The fact that it turned into a weapon wasn't my doing. It was theirs. Gravity doesn't pick sides. It just enforces balance. One evening, long after the last client call, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I watched the city lights flicker in the reflection of the screen. For the first time in years, I wasn't anyone's firewall. I wasn't a hidden name in an appendix or a backup plan disguised as an employee. I was free, fully and finally, and as I powered down for the night, I couldn't help but whisper to the empty room. Not out of spite, but out of peace. "Funny thing about transitions," I said softly, remembering my last words to them. "They require continuity, not nepotism." Then I smiled, closed the lid, and let the silence stand as the final word.